2, we're live.
Okay, hi everyone. Mercury here with Ryan and Colton Holsapple. I was thinking about popping on and doing a lunatic live by myself, and I just checked with Ryan that he was okay with me discussing the topic I was going to bring up. And not only was he okay with it, but him and Colton were kind enough to decide to jump on and join me for this discussion. So I'm still going to start the same way I was going to before I knew these fine fellows were joining me. And I don't know what the rules are. I'd love to just play the fucking song for people. But since I don't know the rules, I'm going to read some lyrics here from one of my favorite songs from my childhood. So this is from the Dead Kennedys song called Where Do You Draw the Line? And I'm going to read just the first 2 verses of this. So, seems like the more I think I know, the more I find I don't. Every answer opens up so many questions. Anarchy sounds good to me. Then someone asks, who'd fix the sewers? Would the rednecks just play king of the neighborhood? How many liberators really want to be dictators? Every theory has its holes when real life steps in. So how do we feed and make room for all the people crowded on our earth and transfer all that wealth from the rich to those who need it? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? I'm not telling you, I'm asking you. Ever notice hardline radicals can go on star trips too, where no one's pure and right except themselves? I'm cleansed of the system, except when my amp needs electric power, or the party line says, no, feminists can't wear fishnets. You want to help stop war? Well, we reject your application. You crack too many jokes and you eat meat. What better way to turn people off than to twist ideas for change into one more church that forgets we're all human beings? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? I'm not telling you, I'm asking you. And for me, now I don't know much about what the fuck this adpocalypse is going on. I've heard a bit about this in the background, but it appears we are drawing a whole bunch of fresh lines on YouTube. I don't know what the old fucking regulations were. I haven't been filtering myself according to any rules. I was not aware of what the rules were before Adpocalypse, and I'm not fully aware of what the rules are now. But it appears something is going on where we're drawing a lot more fucking lines right now, and we're excluding people who aren't being sensitive enough to... am I right? Is this about people who aren't being sensitive enough to marginalized groups? Is that a portion of what this line is being drawn, Ryan?
Go for it.
I guess I'll answer you. Sure. Something jumped out to me. I don't know if it's about the sensitivity. I think it might be. Well, I think it's about sensitivity. I think it's oversensitivity. I think YouTube's worried about. Obviously they lean politically left. That's really indisputable as far as the evidence there. And whether you're on the left or the right, you can't really deny that if you look at the evidence. So obviously they don't want to emotionally trigger, it's a buzzword, the majority of their audience, or not even the majority of their audience, but who they associate themselves with over there in Silicon Valley, which is this kind of hyper leftist agenda. So that's why you're seeing these conservative minds getting censored. And the issue, I think, Mercury, is that, in the United States, which is, where YouTube was founded, 100% sure, we have the First Amendment, which is right to freedom of speech, but we also give private companies the right to govern their own companies. So because we're operating under YouTube's platform, we have to play by their rules. So even if we live in the United States, YouTube, we're at their whim, which is why I really think that it'd be smart for a lot of creators to not just rely solely on YouTube, because it's really dangerous. Because as soon as those, nut jobs in Silicon Valley decide, hey, your opinion isn't in line with whatever we're believing, they can censor you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have no legal protection. As soon as you sign YouTube, as soon as you agree to YouTube's policy, you have no legal protection. So they can do whatever they want to your channel, and they can censor you, and that's legal. I don't think it's right. It's an issue of private companies, and it's something that YouTubers have been dealing with, and it's been getting subtly worse the last 5 years.
Yep. I'm just going to respond to some things in the chat on text so you guys can keep talking. But I'm looking at our chat room.
And so if we're going to start drawing all of these really hard lines where if you're offensive to, and like, I am really fucking left leaning. I think like all the content on this channel up till now shows I want to be as inclusive as possible. Mm-hmm. I never intentionally want to hurt someone's feelings. And I am fine with people who need trigger warnings, who are ultra sensitive. Like, that is totally understandable to me. And I don't want to speak for any other group here, but I want to speak up at the moment because I think the neurodivergent people are beginning to fall into this group of minorities that we need to be more careful with. And so I'm fine with the terms lunatic and all of that shit. But if we're getting more and more politically, culturally, in every way sensitive to not offending people, I want to point out to someone something that really hurt my feelings a long time ago when I was still feeling more sensitive, but where I would never have wanted to censor the person in any way. And I'm picking this example because he's the least offensive comedian I can think of. And so I'm going to see, I'm going to see if you guys can pick up the audio for this. It's Jim Gaffigan, which I think we can all agree is like the most non-offensive comedian possible. If you bring up Jim Gaffigan, you would think, how on earth could he ever have hurt someone's feelings? But way back when I was still learning to come to grips with the fact that I'm a fucking lunatic, and when I wasn't okay with it yet, I remember I'd just gotten the internet. I hadn't had it for long. And there was a night where I was feeling fucking low, and I found a Jim Gaffigan special and thought, great, I just want to laugh and not feel bad. And so I'm going to play a quick clip out of his one of his specials. I believe it was called Beyond the Pale. So this is just a quick 20-second joke inside of his one of his older comedy specials. So let's see if you guys can hear this.
We're all a little weird. We like to think there's someone weirder. I'm sure some of you are looking at me going, well, at least I'm not as weird as Gaffigan. Then I'm thinking, well, at least I'm not as weird as those people in the loony bin. And the people in the loony bin are going, well, at least I'm an orange.
An orange.
And when I first, okay, so first of all, of Jim Gaffigan's joke. This is my point. If we keep going down this road, eventually that is going to be seen as offensive. And yes, that hurt my feelings. I was still dealing with the fact that I've been on a loony bin. And I could go that other route of wanting to take a moral high ground on that. And I could have said, what the fuck is that to joke about? Have you ever been inside a mental asylum? Everyone there is fucking suffering. The fact that they're in there is devastating to their families. And at the end of it, because Jim likes to do these little side things where at the end he talks as though he's the audience. His last thing was, hey, I like oranges. So at the end, he was even like, not to offend anyone who likes oranges. I'm just making fun of those fucking nut jobs. I'm sorry that that offends anyone who likes oranges. I'm fucking fine with that. It hurt me because I was in a sensitive position. But in fact, even Colton, as you were describing like the problems there, you went, because we got these fucking nut jobs who are doing such and such. You dropped
yeah, I use that word a lot, actually.
Exactly. And I have no problem with it. So I can, like, I've heard Peterson say that he gets way more mail from transgender people saying, hey, I never wanted to be part of this like conflict. The same way. And especially with like, there's a joke, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's something like, what do you call someone who hates black people? Racist. What do you call someone who's afraid of gay people? Homophobic. What do you call someone who's afraid of crazy people? Normal. And it's all through our language. We call bad ideas crazy. Or another example, if we keep down this fucking road of censoring anything that can offend anyone, I don't know what you put up as the thumbnail, Ryan, but I sent a couple pictures from the show Gotham. I've been watching the show Gotham recently, and I'm going to try to avoid any spoilers here and just talk in generality. I'm working my way through season 4 right now. But if you watch the show Gotham and you look at the Arkham Asylum, mental patients in that are not even treated as human. And I'm not talking about the main stars. Like, you've got the Joker and your other people who are the cool, crazy villains. But all of the background characters in Arkham are like barely human. When the doors get opened at various points and the crazy people get out, they just mob like zombies. They all go like and stumble forward. You'll see them behind fences where they're all just pressed up against it going trying to reach through the fences like fucking zombies. Mental institutions are full of people suffering. And I have no problem with any of that artwork. I don't want to lose any of it. I don't want people to not be able to make jokes. I don't want to have to get hypersensitive about people using the word nut job or crazy or insane.
Yeah.
And so back to, where do we draw the line? We're drawing all these fucking lines right now, and we're really focusing on lines. What about that empty space? What about the space inside the lines? Where are we making room for anybody anymore? Like, if we're looking to make room for marginalized people, that's great. If we want to, like, fuck racism, fuck homophobia, fuck any of that. As far as I'm concerned, human beings are the we. Actually, I will even devolve that, and we are a part of nature. And we're a part of the cosmic mind, and we're a part of the universe. I could use we to include the sun and the earth and you and me and the rocks and the stones. But we're drawing all these fucking lines and not leaving room for anyone. And not just, where's the room for the minorities? Where's the room for the people who don't think right? All these new fucking rules, and everyone's got to get on board. Like, where's the room for the people who are still somewhat fucking racist or homophobic? Or where's the room for the people who aren't as advanced? Where's the room for the people who are well-intentioned and making mistakes?
Yeah, and also just to note that a lot of it is people not making mistakes at all, and just overreactions from certain people, platforms specifically, like YouTube, overreacting to something that totally didn't deserve any sort of reaction at all.
Well, you're talking a lot about, like, where do we draw the line? I think an important question as well is, who is drawing the line, right? Because I think Peterson would say society needs to be the ones drawing the line. YouTube isn't society. It's a subset of society, very specific mindset. You know, like I said, those people living in Silicon Valley, right? That is who is drawing the line, right? So it's not even a representation of the world, right? I mean, a lot of people in California and New York like to pretend that everybody else is just flyover states. There's no opinions other than, you know, Hollywood and New York. It's just not true. So Silicon Valley may be drawing the lines, but they don't represent society. I mean, I cooled off this whole social justice thing. I was freaking out when I realized that the majority of actual people don't believe in those ridiculous things. Like, it's just perpetuated online, and because the reason that it's so infuriating is because the people that are giving us our media and our education are the ones that are saying what's socially acceptable, and they're not taking a moderate stance. They're taking a stance that's the opposite of moderate. It's extreme. And so when you have a select set of people deciding everything, it's not fair, and I think that needs to be addressed. And so the question should also be, you know, who is drawing the line?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really have no answer to that whatsoever, because it's like, should it be the people? Should it be a democracy? Because even with that, I go back to like what Socrates said, like, what the fuck is with a democracy where everyone's uninformed? Have you ever watched Jimmy Kimmel's Lie Witness News? You can.
I never did.
Check that out sometime. It's like aside from being funny, it really shows you something about culture. He walks up to people and he makes up some lie and then asks them what they think of it. Like, what do you think of Donald Trump installing a stripper pole in the White House? And then he puts the mic in someone's face and they'll go, oh, yeah, I saw that. That was outrageous. Or someone else will be, yeah, I saw that. But hey, that's just, that's just him being him. And people will, in fact, once he took it so far and he said, admittedly, it was hard to get many people to react to this one. But one of them was, what do you think of the fact that they just made the new Godzilla movie, which seems to be very insensitive to all the people who died in the real Godzilla attack of 1950? And he actually had people go like, oh, yeah, well, if Godzilla really killed that many people in 1950 in Japan, it's really insensitive that we released that movie. You walk up to the average person and ask them their opinion on something, they will make something up on the fucking spot.
Yeah.
Even if it's not true. Is democracy really the way to go? Like, we want everyone with no understanding of how shit works to just have their say?
Well, I'm not talking democracy. I'm more mentioning just society, right? And that doesn't necessarily need to be democratic inherently. It's just a matter of how things always were. I mean, the reason, like, let's take bullying at school, for example, right? That's not democratic necessarily, but it is a group of people deciding to cast out, for right or wrong, another subset of people for, differences. And that's unfortunate in many ways, but it's a part of society making these decisions. Now, that's an example of maybe society not making the right decision. But as far as freedom of speech goes, I mean, we can use Peterson's, gender pronoun argument, right? Are we really just going to let a select group of people decide how we dictate our language, right? It doesn't make any sense. Language has always been evolving based on the needs of the entire people, right? There's never been one class deciding language, ever. Throughout history, it's always been a society coming together, evolving with the language. And so when you're suppressing freedom of speech, even if it's censorship on private companies, YouTube is a worldwide platform. Billions of people watch YouTube. Billions, right? So the argument is naive if someone's making it that because it's a private company, they have the right to do whatever they want. Even though that's legally true, morally, I think it's reprehensible. And I think it should be really condemned. I hope that Congress decides to do something about it, honestly. I hope that the government decides to do something about it. A way to regulate these companies so that voices that don't agree with people in Silicon Valley, New York, Hollywood, don't get censored. I mean, it's important. How do we grow as a people if we're censoring people like Steven Crowder? I don't even agree with Steven Crowder on a majority of things. Maybe not a majority, but I mean, at least half of things, maybe. I don't agree. I don't agree with him, but I want him to have the right to say whatever he wants, So on whatever platform.
So you think that YouTube should be like public property?
I think that it should be. It's a private company, but as far as freedom of speech and the amendments go, I think those should apply in a lot of ways to private companies, especially ones that are global sharing networks. I understand if you had a small company or
so
even
you believe in regulation of these platforms.
Yeah, I think unregulated, they can be tyrannical.
To be made that equally valid to just promote competition between different companies to take your business somewhere else and let
that does freedom of speech
decide what the people want.
That's a great argument. I'd be okay with either alternative.
No, I want to say I try to be as minimally politically incentivized on this channel as possible because I've always been afraid that it interferes with the deeper message that we're trying to get out there. Mm-hmm. But I feel like because we're on YouTube doing this stuff, I do have the right as a participant in the system to say, I don't like the censorship that's going on here. I'm not saying that I have the solution. I'm just saying that I don't like it. I also don't like how yesterday I was doing a live stream and I was commenting under a video under fair use, and I got regulated for it, and I got warnings and all sorts of crap when there was no reason that I should have got those warnings. So their algorithm is even set up to suppress certain things that shouldn't be suppressed. That would be fair use commentary. And one of the things that's so pernicious about it is that they use the victimology of oppressed minorities as an excuse to support big corporations.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not supporting anybody but big money. And so small YouTubers like myself and Mercury, who are just trying to get a message out there, and then we get fucked with for no reason. And we are one of the more mild channels out there. I mean, our content is pretty wholesome. This is like the only time I've gone on to talk about something fairly political, and I probably won't do it again because I don't want to. I don't like it. But I'm not going to stand here and watch people get deplatformed and demonetized and this and that just because somebody can't get their head out of their ass and doesn't understand that we're just expressing different opinions. And if you don't like something, you don't have to watch it. It's like we treat people like they have no personal power. If you don't like something, turn it off. Like, you don't have to watch Steven Crowder. It's that simple. Like, take your fucking money and your vote somewhere else. Take your attention is your money. Your attention to YouTube, your attention is your money. So every time you pay attention to something you don't like, you're giving it money. So if you don't want Steven Crowder to be successful, take your attention to another channel. Don't try to deplatform him.
It's just like all these people that, you go to Trump's Twitter, you read the comments, just all these like anti-Trump comments with thousands of likes. People, I mean, I know people who just are very against Trump, who just wait for him to make a new tweet so they can be outraged.
Yeah.
So they can be outraged and they can get upset, and they're feeding into Trump's political game. Like he's playing them like fools because they're giving him attention. And everybody who watched Steven Crowder and who was outraged and reported it to YouTube were giving him attention and popularity. So then YouTube says, okay, well now we're just going to remove Steven Crowder because a bunch of these people that are having an issue with him and saying, he's racist and not sensitive and stuff like that. And this is sort of why I'm leaning towards more government moderation and not towards the free market on this specific issue, because YouTube already has so much control and a monopoly on so many things. Like the idea that a majority of these content creators would move to some other platform at this point, it'd be impossible. You know how many uploads they would have to do, how many different things. Like imagine somebody like PewDiePie transferring over to a different platform, and he's been an advocate for freedom of speech like anybody else. Yes. So even if naturally, I'm just saying it would take a very long time for it to naturally replace something, and maybe it will happen.
And maybe regulations the way. I don't have a solution. I'm just complaining. Here's the other thing.
That's a lot of people.
Here's the other thing. Do you guys realize how patronizing it is what big corporations are doing to the consumers? Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of you. Does that make you feel unsafe? Let me protect you from this unsafe video. It's like, do you realize how disempowering that is to the spirit of the individual? Do you realize how dehumanizing that is? That corporations are acting like they're responsible for taking care of your emotions? Do you realize that? Like if you have any belief in the power of your own human soul, then you will just not buy that for one fucking second, because you know it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit that some big corporation can stand up for you. It's ridiculous.
Like if the corporations tried to protect me from getting my feelings hurt for being mentally ill, I wouldn't have been able to watch Jim Gaffigan. I wouldn't be able to watch Gotham. Yeah, and I want to watch those things, and my feelings getting because when Gotham has not hurt my feelings, while I've been aware watching it often, I'm like, holy shit, you have dehumanized people with mental illness to a ridiculous degree. It did not hurt my feelings. I understand how it serves the story, and I am actually perfectly fine with it. Although I would say there's a space open in culture to discuss, hey, by the way, that's not really what mental patients are like. We're dealing with a form of archetype here.
Exactly.
Storytelling. And or with Steven Crowder, he once said something, he was trying to make some point about people always complaining about the world and that they're just fine, the world needs to change. And he said something like, there's schizophrenic people screaming that demons are scratching at their balls. Like, or there's schizophrenic people hallucinating that demons are tearing at their balls, yelling, it's not me, it's the world that needs to change. And like, yeah, how fucking insensitive was that joke? He was in no way thinking about schizophrenic people whatsoever, as he said. But he was in the moment. He was doing comedy. I would never want to censor that content. On the other hand, what I said before about do we really want to do things with democracy sort of is like, and my history's not very good, but I don't know. Like, was slavery ended because more than 50% agreed it was wrong? Or is it like Ken Wilber says sometimes, where when 10% of society changes, the behavior of all of society changes? So, for instance, to get rid of the fucking racism that's been a real problem in all of human history, did that happen through democracy, or did that happen through a minority forcing cultural change? Because, yeah, so I don't know.
I can try to answer that as a historian. Yeah. So the slavery issue is interesting. I personally don't necessarily buy that minority argument. I'd have to look into it more. I don't know. I haven't seen the Ken Wilber stuff yet. But to me, I think a minority can be the spark, but nothing. I mean, people have to eventually concede, right? So even if 10% of people find out, let's just all theoretically say that everything coming out of this social justice agenda is right, and we're stubborn white guys who are disagreeing with it, and in 20 years they're going to make movies about how terrible we all were, right? Let's just say say that everything that they're saying is correct. Okay. Let's say that's 10% of America, right? They can't just change society without first convincing at least 50%, in my point of view. Right? They may be the ones who start it, but at some point, it's not like 90% of people be walking around in society that's dominated by social justice that disagree with it. It would change. Like you could look at the Bolshevik Revolution. A lot of people wanted communism, and that led to the death of a lot of people. Right? It wasn't a minority, but another great example that might feed into your point is the American Revolution, where I'm pretty sure it was like less than 40% of people were patriots, maybe 30%. 30% were loyalists, and then everybody else was in between. So, and that's a lot with elections too. So it's more about, I guess, who has more motivation rather than percentages as well. I mean, because once you win, if there's a great battle, whoever wins the battle, the people who are on the edge will just follow that side because they don't want their lives interrupted. That's what happened in the revolution. Plenty of people would have been fine under the British Empire. They would have continued living as they had, right? But they decided that it wasn't in their interests to take a side when it's so risky. And most people, like another Peterson thing, most people aren't that brave. Most people would just go with the flow of whatever society's saying. Yeah. So,
well, I think it's dangerous to skim over individuals, even if they have empty shells of meaningless opinions that are just based on getting approval from other people. I think every individual should be treated as if the world is on their shoulders, right? And I know that that's kind of a Petersonian thought, but I think that that's true. I think that is kind of one of the cornerstones of the idea of democracy, is that every individual is treated as the ideal, treated as if they were someone worth listening to. And so I do think that that's important personally. And the other thing is that every great lie is within every great lie is concealed a half truth. So just because certain populations are presenting things that have some truth in it, whether it be about social justice or censorship or whatever, like that's what makes it such a great lie. It hooks you in with a half truth, and then it swamps you with bullshit. But that half truth makes it seem as if it's all legit. And so people take the half truth and they use that as camouflage so that they don't have to be criticized, because they can keep pointing back to it. See, there's oppression. See, there's people's feelings are hurt. See, and you can keep using those half-truths to conceal the damage that you're doing around that. So I just think that we need to examine the actual effect of what's happening, not just the little half-truth that's being used to propel a certain action, like demonetizing a channel or deplatforming someone. Okay, like let's take Alex Jones for example. Here's a half-truth: Alex Jones could potentially be dangerous. That's possible. That's a half-truth. Yeah. Therefore, here's where it gets into a lie. Therefore, we should deplatform him on all platforms, and he shouldn't have a voice anywhere. Yeah. Like, you know, does just because they're using a half-truth doesn't mean that the whole thing's justified.
And when it comes to social justice warriors, I don't understand that phenomenon. Like, I have been cut off from the world for over a decade. Like, I don't understand it at all, really. But I think I am probably on board with the driving motivation behind a lot of their ideologies, like the idea that we need to make a place for trans people. Absolutely. And I've heard people in the IDW even go like, are you aware this is going to lead to like having to accept other kin? The idea that some people identify as non-human. So I would go so far as like to that, no problem. It's like, yeah, we got to make room for trans people. And I'm also happy to make room for other kins. And I'm happy to make room for every kind of person we have that is not attacking other people.
What do you mean by make room?
Like, yes. Okay. Part of what it seems the social justice warriors are saying is we need to have a place for trans people to exist. Absolutely. We have to make room for them. We have to allow them, like, make room. Anyone who's bigoted needs to start making room for more, or mind your own fucking business. Like, who cares what what your neighbor's doing if it doesn't affect you? But I don't understand the then attacking, but we also, it's, okay, so I love everyone the social justice warriors love. I agree with them. I love all those people. Let's help them. The difference is I don't hate the people who are hurting them. I love them too. And so it's like Peterson said about his activity in the socialist world when he was younger. He found at one point that it wasn't that these people loved the poor. It was that they hate the rich. I'm on board with loving the poor. I'm on board with loving the marginalized. I'm on board trying to adapt to people. In fact, the conversation I recorded yesterday, the guy I was speaking with spoke how once he had an employee that he figured was somewhere in the Asperger's scale. And he went, like, he was the manager, and he went to the owner and was like, look, we have to make special conditions for this guy or he's not going to be able to operate. They made room for him. He had light sensitivity and weird touch issues, and they made room for him in the company. And he was then able to contribute wonderfully to the company. So yes, we have to make spaces for these marginalized people, but let's not attack the normal people. Let's not, like, I really want to make a space for everyone. So absolutely, like with gender, there are people who don't fit into man and woman category. Fantastic. Let's make a place for them. And I'm happy to categorize 40 other genders if those exist and learn about them. Fantastic. But that doesn't negate man and woman. In the same way that the transgender want to say, please let me be the gender I am. Okay, excellent. Also, please let him be a man and please let her be a woman.
Yeah. It's backwards. It's backwards thinking when you're asking everybody to accept you at the same time, not accepting the majority of people. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's about accepting each other. And yes, there's certain shit that's really fucking bad, like racism. There is still racism. Like, absolutely. We have to find a way to deal with that. So I'm going to make it more personal to me. Like, there are some people who hate crazy people. And in fact, like, you could look, if you decide to focus in on the, like, the group identity of the mentally ill, we absolutely have been going through a genocide. We were in those fucking camps with the Jews, and society in North America, we were sterilizing insane people 100 years ago or a little bit over, like, so they couldn't repopulate. And society has been trying to wipe crazy people out. Like, either don't breed, or we've literally killed crazy people, or we're trying to cure you, like gay therapy. Like, you can't be crazy. And so the other day, and to come back again to the Joker, because before I was saying how the background of the Joker in Gotham was dehumanizing crazy people. On the other hand, the new trailer for the Joker movie, at one point, if you pause it when you see the Joker writing things, one of the things he's writing on his page is the worst thing about having a mental illness is having to behave as though you don't. And if you look at the work of Joseph Polomeni in Shamans Among Us, or you look at the work of Tom Wotan, they're saying instead of trying to get rid of the symptoms, try to learn to handle the symptoms and live the life that is appropriate for somebody who is neurodivergent. So perhaps you have to live a more shamanic life. Perhaps if you have Asperger's, people around you are going to need to make accommodations. Perhaps your employer is going to have to make special rules for you. I'm all for that. I think somebody on, what's his name? Russell Brand. I forget who he was talking to, but he has a recent video called something like, "Are you an orchid or a dandelion?" And he was pointing out that children can fall into two categories, dandelions or orchids. And dandelions are all of those kids that Jonathan Haidt is talking about. They're they're anti-fragile, and they can grow like a dandelion, can grow fucking anywhere. And it can reach like an even potential. However, orchids require very special conditions. And there are certain of us who are not anti-fragile, the way Jonathan Haidt goes on and on. There are certain of us who are like orchids. And according to this guy's studies, and I apologize to him for getting his name, there are certain kids that if you put them in a bad environment, they're going to do horribly. Yet, if you put them in an overly caring environment, they are going to do phenomenally. And those dandelion children don't do better or worse in those two environments. Like, they're anti-fragile. In fact, overprotecting a dandelion might, in fact, like hold it back, an anti-fragile person. But we do have orchids. And some of those orchids are people with mental illnesses or autism or Asperger's, or they're transgender people. And I'm totally behind giving special condition to orchids, 100%. But I also don't want to consider the dandelions a fucking weed. And yeah, we categorize dandelions as a weed now. We try to poison them and get rid of them. They're pretty fucking flowers. You can make wine out of a dandelion. You can eat the leaves, they're food. Dandelions are also wonderful. So I don't want to attack anyone. And I want to help everyone, including like this idea of punch a Nazi. No, fucking hug a Nazi. I forget who it is. There was some guy who had that campaign. Like, no, the reason because being racist is damaging to yourself.
Yeah.
Everything we worry about other people doing to us, it's worse to be the one doing it. Like, even you look back to Socrates and Christ, it would be much worse to be the person poisoning Socrates than to be Socrates drinking the hemlock. As horrible as what was done to Christ, whether it's a myth or real or whatever, as horrible as that is, how much worse would it be to be the soldier that put the spear through the side of him? Yeah. As horrible as racists are to other people, it is worse to be racist. How badly does that damage your soul?
That's such a great point. And I really want to just comment. I love your viewpoint on this. It's one that I don't think is out there enough. You're coming from a place of pure conscientiousness, as in you're being aware of the issues, but you're getting the full picture. It's not a stance I would take. I'm harsher than you on these specific issues, which is fine. I love that we don't have the same viewpoint on it, because I think that's necessary. But I love that the way that you're coming from it is from conscientiousness, like saying, I want people to be included. It's like you're not coming from a place of, oh, there's these people are oppressing us and these are the enemy, and if only we could get rid of these people, then all my problems and all my group's problems would go away. And I think the solution to a lot of what you're talking about is just individualism, right? And to some extent, and this is where I get tripped up, you can't just have a completely individualistic society. At some point, collectivization needs to be there, right? But right now we're shifting into way too much collectivization, right? I mean, if you can't collectivize, then there's no way to organize things and help people in certain ways, right? Based on, you know, whatever their background is or something, right? You can't, we don't have the power to actually view each person as an individual in every single subset. It's too complicated, right? But to do it as much as possible, I think, is something that we should all strive for, right? It's something that I catch myself needing to do more and more when I'm looking at somebody and just saying, no, this isn't somebody because of this, and this. This is just an individual I'm speaking to. It's not like I'll see a woman. This is a problem with me. I'll see a woman with pink hair and like tattoos all over herself, and I'm like, oh fuck, she's about to go off on me on this feminist rant. And like, no, I need to stop. I need to understand that this is an individual, and just because they look like somebody I've seen on YouTube that may be a social justice warrior or something like that doesn't mean that's true for them, and their opinions could be completely different. And whether or not you're right most of the time based on your collectivizations is irrelevant, because if you're wrong just 10% of the time, you're dispossessing that 10% of people, and you're cutting off the possibility of connecting with them. You're saying, I'm not going to talk to any women with short pink hair because I know 90% of them are feminists. It's like, well, you're cutting yourself off from a lot of individuals who are, you probably would agree with on a lot of issues. And that's just an example coming from my side point of view. That's how I relate to it. And I think that's the solution. Why can't we just relate to people as individuals? Like, and you say you're cut off from the social justice thing. I mean, I go to a university, a very liberal university, CU Boulder, and I have never witnessed ever a minority being discriminated against or being shut down at CU Boulder. But I personally have been told that my opinion isn't valid because of my color of skin and my gender. So I'm aware that it's out there. It's not some online facade exclusively, right? And I'm not trying to claim a victim. I don't care when people do that, because that just shows me and the world how possessed they are by some ideology, right? And they can't back it up, because as soon as you start exposing them, they can't handle it. So they'll just try to shut you down. So you win every time, because, you know, just like you say, don't punch a Nazi, go hug a Nazi. I'm trying to have the same mentality as far as these social justice warriors that are coming after me, you know.
And I want to pick up on something you said about connection, because I think that's what's being interfered with. Is true progress, in my opinion, is based on human-to-human connection between people who have a mutual respect and care for one another, and they genuinely want the best outcome possible for the entire group, including themselves. True connection is not happening in the public discourse.
Mm-hmm.
True connection is rarely happening on YouTube. True connection is just being absolutely squashed at the university. Trust me, I know, as well as Colton. And a lot of these people that are interfering with true connection because they're angry, whether they're on the far right or the far left or wherever they align themselves, if you get them alone and you just truly have a discussion with them, you'll find something genuine under the surface.
Absolutely.
But you got to get past that facade. And the facade is obviously identity politics, ideological possession, on both sides, not just one or the other. It's happening to all of us. We are all getting possessed by ideas. If you tell me that you haven't been possessed by one of your ideas, I would question that. I would question that very strongly, because my guess is that if you are in a state where you're highly triggered, where you're actually trying to attack the person in front of you, you're also possessed by an ideology. So for me, like, this whole thing it's not about fighting anymore. Okay. Like, you know, obviously Dr. Peterson is fighting something, but he's doing it from a very particular angle, and maybe that's needed. But for me, it's just about connecting. And so I have no interest in trying to convince somebody that they're wrong. I have no interest in a political argument about how we should run things. I just want to connect. I just want, like, can we be two human beings? Because if we're not two human beings, then there is no starting point. It's a non-starter. So if if anybody is in a position where they're dehumanizing someone else, no matter where they align, then you're screwed. You're not going to get anywhere, and you're just going to continue to be in this cyclical, toxic conversation or debate that just continues to run itself out. And that's what we're seeing in Hollywood. That's what we're seeing on Twitter. That's what we're seeing on YouTube. That's what we're seeing big corporations do. That's what the whole landscape is just filled with toxic bullshit. You know what I want? I want to know that individual that I disagree with about their politics. I want to know what they really care about. I want to know what their goals are. I want to know what they want in their life. I want to know what they find meaningful. Because I can guarantee that you'll feel like you're talking to an absolutely different person if you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm just kind of done. You know, like I surrender. Like I'm still in university. I've been going through this intensely for like the past 6.5, 7 years. And I've had my fights. I've had my arguments. I've had my debates. I've seen pretty shitty stuff happen. And at this point, I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to care about myself. I'm going to care about others. And if other people want to have a toxic discussion, I'll walk away. And that's where I'm at right now with it.
Totally agree.
Now, I still think it's okay to complain about this whole YouTube thing, this whole deplatforming thing, because we are YouTubers. We put in, we put in hundreds of hours on YouTube and podcasting, So I think it's okay to acknowledge that we're concerned. But where I draw the line for myself is I'm not interested in arguing. I'm not interested in fighting. I'm not interested in taking it to the streets. I'm just telling you that I hope I don't get censored, and I don't like how other people are getting censored because I don't think it's good for a connection between human beings. And I think ultimately it's toxic.
The book by Peter, the book that not by Peterson that he recommends, Ordinary Men. It's about these not SS officers, but these German police force in Poland during the 1940s, and how these ordinary men that are relatable to a lot of people start doing these terrible things. So it really humanizes them, and that's why I really like your point. Don't punch a Nazi, hug a Nazi. It's like everybody has this capability of this great evil, and I think a lot of people just think when somebody doesn't agree with them that it's rooted in evil, right? And everybody has the potential for that. So you need to understand that when somebody disagrees with you and it's to the point where you're like concerned, like morally about their position, just remember that everybody has the potential to be evil, and have compassion and understanding for that, right? And I think that's why I really like your approach, Mercury. And there wouldn't be a social justice problem if people were just as conscientious as you. And unfortunately, just like in 1917 in Russia, people aren't approaching it from a compassion, conscientiousness standpoint. They're approaching it out of hate. And
yeah, that's right. That's the problem. It's coming from hate and it's coming from bitterness, resentment, hatred, and that's just a recipe for absolute disaster, because the intentions are never good in the first place. The intentions start off based on resentment, and
even if the underlying motivation can be good, like you were saying, Mercury, is in like people being included and nobody being discriminated against, right? The intention of going about it by targeting people and targeting groups of people and collectivization, it's like fighting fire with fire. It's an eye for an eye. It's just never going to work.
And it's like I want to be totally inclusive of people and never be excluding people. However, we do need to exclude behavior.
Exactly.
It's called boundaries.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I totally agree. Well said.
So, for instance, being abusive to other people, hitting people, like that is not right. If someone's abusive, we need to set clear boundaries with that. And that is just for all people being abusive, not to categorize, like to completely ignore the identity of the person and only to be focused on behavior. And what you were saying about the compassion before, I'm going to take this somewhere more extreme where it becomes really obvious. So take the situation of somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer or Jack the Ripper or H.H. Holmes. If we have somebody killing people and cutting them up and eating them or whatever, like, yes, we need to stop that. That's bad for society. We want to find that person. But even then, I don't understand anymore the mindset of, I hate that person. Let's now punish them. I feel so fucking bad for whoever has got lost in a psychotic delusion and has committed those atrocities.
Yeah.
Although that would be harder to say if they killed one of your loved ones.
No, still. How horrible is that? Because what if I had a fucking delusion so bad I killed one of my loved ones? That's worse.
Yeah,
I would rather someone else kills one of my...
You're coming from, and I also see the perspective of more of the protective mentality. Like if somebody does something horrible to somebody else that you care about, I don't see any problem with being angry at that person. In fact,
Okay,
I don't think that that's wrong in any way, shape, or form. However, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have compassion at all, and I totally see where you're coming from. But if somebody hurt one of my loved ones, I guarantee you I wouldn't be sitting there saying I feel so bad for that person. You know what I'd be doing? I'd be probably thinking about restraining myself from retaliating, or I'd be cursing under my breath, or whatever, depending on the level of atrocity that was committed. My warrior would come out, and I'd be ready for war. So, and that's just a different personality type, I guess. But that's where I would.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing which is right here. I'm just like sharing the way I see it. But no, for me, if someone killed one of my loved ones and I was fantasizing about punishing that person, I would consider that a failure in me. And so, and I know this is nowhere near as intense. So it's, and I'm not saying I could do it. Like I also would have those thoughts appear. And so my best example is I'd gotten ripped off a couple months ago. And yes, this is like, it takes it down to something much easier, but like I got ripped off $225, and that was a lot of fucking money to me. When I realized I'd gotten ripped off, it was very quick to want to be angry at that person. And I didn't allow that. And I ran myself through the same shit I said to you. Well, what would you rather have? That you just got ripped off $225, or that you were the asshole ripping people off? And I asked myself, imagine that. What would I have to give up about myself to become that person? How much of my connection to God and my psychological stability would I be sacrificing? Would I be able to go to sleep with a clear conscience? I would be internally tormented, and I also believe we exist beyond death. So I also feel very bad for anyone who dies without having the remorse for what they've done. We're all fucking souls here, and yeah. I'm trying to get everyone out of hell, and especially if you're a Christian and you want to gloat over someone getting what they deserve, like you really want that we have more souls in hell and fuck that person? They aren't here alone controlling the fucking world. Right. We are also delicate. There's the thrownness of life. And like, if I lost my shit, because when I lost my shit and had delusions, I thought I was on the side of God. And I was ready to die for others. And I was ready for the police to shoot me. However, someone else I know well, when he had a psychotic delusion, he thought the Antichrist possessed him. He tried to attack me. He smashed a bunch of my fucking shit. Right. I was trying to help him through a psychotic break. He attacked me, then stripped naked, ran off into the woods in the middle of the night in February, and he was okay, but he almost lost his toes. He didn't fucking choose that difference. And if he had been, and he had some horrible delusions that I was talking him out of, wanting to kidnap someone, like an ex, wanting to, I don't see the difference between me and him. I didn't fucking choose it. And so everybody who loses their fucking mind, and especially if they're going to hell for that, or there's some afterlife, like how the fuck are we going to applaud that? That's one of us.
Well, let's make a different. I think we're agreeing here. I just want to make a differentiation. I think somewhere where Ryan's coming from is more like not necessarily someone who's psychotic or has a mental illness. But and me personally, because I don't want to speak for him here, because this is my opinion. I believe a lot in free will. And even though I believe in all the genetic arguments that Ryan tells me about and all the science coming out of that, I still believe totally in free will.
Yeah, and
I know
genetics doesn't negate free will.
I know, but people have been drawing that line, and I don't agree. I know you don't. I'm just saying I don't agree with that. So, and the difference between somebody who has that mental disability is that maybe the free will line is a little bit more blurred than in the average person. But I have less compassion for a bad person making bad choices that's harming me or close ones or anyone, when I don't necessarily think all bad people do have a mental disability. They just made bad choices. They chose that. Maybe their circumstances were harder or they were more genetically predisposed. But the way I wouldn't respond to that necessarily inherently, and maybe this is a problem with me, is I wouldn't go and feel compassion for that person. I would feel compassion for the people that they harmed that weren't making those choices.
Yeah, and I don't think that compassion is necessarily like the greatest measurement of your progress as an individual, although it's one measurement. The other thing is, I think there's another distinction to be offered here. If somebody came into this yard right now and started attacking Colton, I wouldn't be thinking, oh, poor soul, he feels like he has to attack Colton. I would be thinking, I'm going to fuck this guy's day up so he gets off of Colton. So I would do whatever I needed to do to create obviously probably using minimum necessary force, but to create the most separation between Colton and that person. And I wouldn't really give a damn if that ended up hurting that person in that moment, because all I would be thinking about is protecting Colton. Now, later, in hindsight, I might be thinking, it's too bad that guy did that, and it's too bad he made that choice. But it is a choice, and he made it. And I will not I will never patronize someone to the extent that I say, oh, they had no choice, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that for 1 second. Now, if you believe that, I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just telling you that from my belief, I believe that choices are made, and that we need to be held responsible. That doesn't mean that there's no compassion, but I just think that it's important for me that there is like some personal responsibility involved in the choices that are made, regardless of the excuses that the person has, because we're always going to have excuses, some bigger than others. Some people have more excuses than I do for making bad choices. Some people have less excuses, but ultimately, like, if we can't treat, for me, this is my perspective where I stand, if we can't treat every human being as somewhat of an epicenter of choice and free will, regardless of their personal limitations, that they have some choice, even if it's like a really small amount, that dehumanizes us, and that patronizes us, and that makes us into automatons and unconscious. Just we're no different than a bug at that point, or an animal. We're just doing what we do based on pure instinct. There's no thought or consciousness that goes into it. So just because we are made up of genes and DNA, and our brains are programmed in certain ways, I never for 1 second thought that meant that we didn't have choice. It just means that we have choice within the limitations of our human being. So if you have a mental limitation, like if you have Asperger's, or if you have some what you call mental illness, I don't use that term psychologically speaking. I don't think it's the right term for me. But like you said, neurodivergent. I like that. It's neurodivergent. That person might have a totally different set of choices, or they might have less choice than I have, but they still have choice. Like there's still a fundamental choice not to be resentful and bitter and attack others, or to do that. And even if we can't see how that's happening in their brain, I don't believe anyone is born with no choice. Like even if you have the genes to be a killer, which they've proven, there's the killer gene. Okay, it's like the MDMA gene or something. It makes you more likely to be violent. Okay, if your father and your grandfather and they were all thieves, and you're more likely to be a thief, or you're more likely to be violent. And they've proven that out. There's a book called The Anatomy of Violence. It's all proven. But that doesn't mean that person couldn't have made a different choice. It just means that it was harder. That's all. And so for me, that's where I stand with choice. And so I hope that makes sense. And I ultimately think that you're not saying something totally different than that. You're just looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, and I think so we don't slow our conversation down repeatedly. Let's just do this for the record. all of us are not trying to convince each other. We're not trying to convince anyone in the audience. We're all sharing our thoughts in the moment. And for me, not only am I not negating, I'm really, in a way, yes-anding a lot, even if it doesn't seem like it. I also disagree with myself. So I have a subpersonality that really agrees with everything Colton said.
Right.
And I'm talking a lot from the mystic part of me at the moment, just so we can all stop going, okay, I'm not trying to convince you and I'm not saying this is right. We're just having fun. I've got all my filters down. I'm just throwing out what's coming to me. We're just sharing ideas.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
Now, I want to jump back to, I think you have all that compassion hidden in your theology or your philosophy of how to deal with someone attacking Colton. And the words that were important that you glossed over as if that was obvious was using minimal force. Of course, we're regulating behavior. We want to stop anyone from attacking Colton. But you've assumed minimal force there. Why? Why not decapitate?
Because I don't feel...
Please decapitate anybody attacking me.
Let me respond to that.
Wait, we really show everyone that we don't accept violence. We begin to remove those dangerous genes by just attacking. And to me, everything I said about compassion and where do we draw the line?
Yeah.
Do we have free will? Don't we? Where? None of us knows where that line is.
Right.
We're not sure. How much is that person at fault? I don't know. And it's the compassion that drives the use of minimal force. Because then you're loving the person, but excluding the behavior.
Yeah,
I will do
not just the person, that you're also loving the principle.
You're sharing the human connection. That's what that is. Is that you inherently don't want to. You inherently, and regardless of your circumstance, innately do not want to harm another human being. That is the root of your biology, right? So wires can get crossed, circumstances can change, and genetics and stuff can play a role. But evolutionarily, right, it makes no sense for people to innately want to harm other people. We want to survive as a species. We're all in it together. We're all of the same subset. So even if you're more genetically predisposed to be a killer, stuff like that, the overarching biology behind it would be you want to reproduce, one, and you don't want to just mindlessly kill other human beings. You want the survival of the species.
That's
the connection. That's a human connection.
The one caveat in genetics is you don't necessarily want to hurt your tribe, but there's a lot of evolutionary reasons why you might want to hurt someone else's tribe. In fact, it might be very well possible that you want to hurt someone else's tribe. And
no, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying human beings, it's not like they come in with the world with a blank slate.
No,
right?
Absolutely not.
But I think now more than ever, we're starting to realize, especially with YouTube and so many social media platforms that connect the world, is that we need to all start being a part of the same tribe.
Yeah, a global tribe.
The tribe is the human race, right? And it's complicated because, I read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, I think is his name. And he talks about how humans are limited to the capacity of connecting close with people from 60 to 200 people max. And that's just because of how tribe relations develop. But now we're relating to so many more than that people in a human life. I mean, the average person in the West or in a developed nation will connect with far more than 200 people in their lifetime. But unfortunately, we developed, for most of our evolutionary history as hunter-gatherers, not interacting and forming relationships with more than 60 to 200 people. So in order to become a global tribe, how do we overcome that evolutionary predisposure? Because
we might not be able to.
No. Yeah, maybe not.
There's no, because some people think the answer is to go back to tribalism and form your tribe and go live in your own communities and, block out the external world, while other people think globalism is the answer. Shit, man, I don't know. I have no idea I don't think tribalism, especially the way it's so toxic now, is a good answer. Although if you did just want to create a commune and go live out and mind your own business in the forest, I wouldn't see any problem.
Well,
with
there's
that
no getting rid of tribalism, right?
No,
There's positive ways to express it, like for people who really have a need to be tribal. I think that'd be sports.
Honestly, an
sports
alien
is a
invasion might be the best thing that could happen for this planet, and the reason for that, is it would unify us under one cause. So although it would be very difficult, and we'd probably all die,
it wouldn't be.
We would all unify.
I think it might be. I think it'd be better if for the human race to not have an alien. Maybe exclusively for the uniting of the world tribe.
Ryan, on that point, I want to say quickly, you've got to read the graphic novel Watchmen.
Really?
Yeah. Seriously, it's really. It's not a fucking comic book. It's really deep, and it deals with exactly that idea of how to unify people. So, like, definitely grab the graphic novel Watchmen and read it.
If I was like a deep undercover government official, and I had the power to create like a media conspiracy, I would just say, listen, we're going to be attacked by aliens next week at 12 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. And I would just watch. Would we panic? Would we come together? I mean, that'll show our true colors. Let's see what we're really made of. If we panic, we all destroy each other. You know, it was all worthless anyway because we couldn't even stand the test. If we all come together, it shows our true colors. Then you say, I was just kidding, just wanted to see if y'all could get along. You know, it's kind of like a trick that a good parent plays on their kids. You know,
I think that's a hilarious example.
Read Watchmen, though. That's exactly the plot, is somebody following through on that exact idea.
Oh, wow.
But sorry, Colton, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I have to get out of here in a minute, but
yeah, I'm going to have to go too.
I just want to say, I mean, I really enjoy where this conversation is heading, and I think it's a good conversation. We went way beyond the adpocalypse, but in a way, what we were talking about is related to that, very much so. It's like relating to people, individualism, compassion, all those things are related to this. That's the overarching theme. And speaking of that is important to solving this issue. I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon, but I mean, maybe it will. And
that whole alien idea could really expedite the project.
Yeah, nobody care about getting censored on YouTube if there's aliens in your backyard, I guess. But Mercury, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think we need to be doing more of these. So we have a lot of good ideas to exchange.
Absolutely. I love this talk. Although I just want to say one last thing so that I'm not misrepresenting myself. Aside, like everything that I was saying there about that compassion, that is the majority of my sub-personalities agree with that. And that is what my soul goes with. And that's how I operate. However, I would push back on we naturally do not want to hurt each other. I'm also aware of a number of sub-personalities that fucking hate humanity. And I absolutely understand a serial killer. And if I want to unlock that part, I can instead explain, yeah, I've got something that's like the Joker that wants to tear it all apart. And if I wanted to let that out and my soul decided or I got confused, I absolutely understand. I hate everyone. Let's murder for the sake of murder. So I'm not naive about that part of me.
That was the whole point of me talking about the killer gene.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that simple. I mean, Robert Sapolsky, and I'll let you go here in a second, but Robert Sapolsky, who's a world-famous endocrinologist and neuroscientist, he teaches at, I think it's Yale. He talks about how it's not just as simple as having the killer gene, okay? That's a vast oversimplification. It's also your diet. It's also the environment that you grow up in. It's also
so many factors.
There's so many conditions that can trigger a genetic predisposition to come out. So it's not just black and white. We can't reduce things to one cause. What we have to do is, what he talks about is there's all these different buckets, these causal buckets. He looks at it as a scientist, so he's not looking at it from a soul. He's not looking at it from a spiritual perspective, but I would add the spiritual bucket, okay, because I have a spiritual side. And all those buckets make up very many different, proclivities and ideations and actions. So it's never black and white, and anybody who says it's black and white is just clearly, they're not varying their thinking very well. So I think this was a wonderful conversation, and I agree. Compassion's a good thing. I also think boundaries are good. I also think that it's okay sometimes to say no and fuck that, or get the fuck out of my space. And it's also okay to say, and I still love you, but like take a fucking hike. That's just protecting yourself.
And in fact, the one thing that I'll try to say is super quick, but when you were talking about if someone were to attack Colton, I actually think you and I would agree on the exact same behavior, but I can see how that can be entirely compassion motivated, because whether it's the serial killer or someone attacking Colton, allowing him to badly injure Colton is worse for the attacker as well. So the quicker you step in to stop an attacker, you can do it out of compassion for both. This is bad for Colton, and it's bad for you.
Sure.
Are you really going to stop and start like go to your heart and be like, oh, like I really want to stop this event? Like, I know maybe you have the power to do that, but I would be like, boom, like let's go. You know what I mean? I wouldn't
at that point.
I wouldn't be thinking about the well-being of anything.
It's so instinct. It's so hardwired responding to something like protecting your loved ones.
If somebody broke into my house and tried to hurt Victoria, dude, I wouldn't be thinking for 1 second, like, I hope this person has a good afterlife or any of that. Like, I would just be like, boom. And then in hindsight, I might have compassion, but in the moment, I'm going after it. I'm the same way when I play sports. I'm not thinking like, oh, it's too bad the other team. I really wish the other team like had more points. Like, I feel so bad for them. I'm like pumped. I'm like, let's go. But also I know how bad it feels to lose. So I can see how that would feel. But it's not like, it's like Kobe Bryant, who's known to be like an assassin on the court. It's not like he's sitting there. He doesn't give a shit about the other team in that moment. He's just going for pure victory, championship. So
yeah.
I can see your perspective, but I can also see the value in just like getting into your warriorhood a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Both polarities are there for a reason with absolutely everything.
Yes. Hey, dude, this was a great idea to talk about. And I'm so sorry to everyone that we didn't read the chat. Unfortunately, just having 3 people on a live stream is a lot to keep up with, and reading the chat would have taken the conversation in a totally different direction. But I noticed all your chats, and I'll go back and read all of them later, and I really appreciate it. And just so you know, most of the time we do read the chat when we're on live, but this time we just didn't get to. Anything you want to say, Merck, since you hosted this?
No, I'm good, except that I love this, and we should have Colton on more often. So are you around for a while? Like, you were in Italy and Peru before?
Well, I guess I'll plug this real quick, if that's okay, Ryan.
Plug it.
So I'm actually starting my own company. It's going to be similar to what you guys are doing. It's going to be a little bit more adventure action based. So I just bought a bunch of camera equipment, and I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel. I'm going to be basing it on a website primarily, though, because I don't trust YouTube for the reasons we discussed already. So it's called A Beautiful Life. There's no videos, or really, I could get you a subscription link. There's no subscribers. I just started it up this week. Haven't made any videos, but I'll be coming in shortly with films about different locations, and trying to really, the purpose of it is trying to help people find meaning in their lives. So whether that be through surfing or golf or whatever I'm going to be doing and filming, it's going to be the art of being a Renaissance man, doing many things. And I'm really excited to get started on it. Ryan said he's willing to collab with me. I hope Mercury will collaborate with me as well. And
absolutely.
It's going to be travel based, so I'll be all over. And so we'll definitely have more chances. I don't know if I'm going to be having regular live streams like this. I'm not sure if it's going to be that setup, but if I do, I'm definitely going to have you on if you're willing, and I'll be back on for this representing my own channel and my own company as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Ryan, put up the link for that so that anyone else interested can go ahead and subscribe now, so that when you put something up, they'll see it. And yeah, I think that's great. And definitely I'll be thrilled to have you come on with us again, or to appear on your channel sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Mercury. I appreciate it. I'll send Ryan that link right now. If anybody's interested in subscribing, yeah, it'll just be in the description.
I just want to point Boy Meets Wart says, a beautiful life sounds like a great project. Fuck yeah, man. So right on. Thank you everyone for participating. Sorry we didn't get to your comments. Chris M, I see you. You say cruelty requires empathy. You would know because you've been in combat. So I trust you as the authority on that subject. All right, everyone. I love you very much.
I'm
and
putting the
thanks for
live
hearing-
stream link in the chat right now, or the subscription link in the chat right now. But it should end, and then should be the last thing you see.
All right.
Bye.